And I love that language is continually evolving and alive. My invitation is that we need to use our words intentionally.
Greetings, humans, and welcome to the 11th episode of the Anti-Professional Podcast. Can you believe it? We've made it to episode 11. I'm shocked. I'm proud of us. Today I am speaking with adulting coach Sara Deacon. Sara Deacon works with young people to help them move through the transition from, being in your parents' house to being your own person. And she shows you that it is not so terrible. It's actually kind of fun. Today's episode, as always, is sponsored by identitypending.com for your digital marketing needs. But I would also like to direct you to read my new poetry book, A Pocket Full of Seeds, a lyrical memoir by Chuck Copenspire that includes drawings, journal entries, and a very accurate description of my life through my 20s, the hardships, being houseless, unplanned pregnancies, getting into a cult, destroying that cult. It's a whole thing. You should read the book. But anyway, let's get on with the episode. And thanks for listening. Greetings, humans, and welcome to the 11th episode of the Anti-Professional Podcast. As I was informed last time, most podcasts don't make it to 10, so here we are at 11. I'm here with Sara Deacon, the adulting coach. And Sara, I'm going to open with the poem I wrote for you.
Love
it.
It
Goes like this. Goes, Sara Deacon, breathtaking beacon, guiding the youth through the chute to adulthood. It ain't easy being Gen Z, stumbling through adulting. Where are the role models? Who do we turn to? The whole world is burning, and yet you expect me to thrive, find faith in being alive when I am so small and so scared and so lost. That's where Sara comes in. Not with platitudes or talking down, no fixing bad attitudes or turning frowns upside down, but sitting in the mud and validating the experience of overwhelm, undersleep, and social media delirium. It's a wild time to be a little sprout, but we've got folks like Sara to help us out. Validate the struggle and light a match, throw out a line and hope we catch a life we can be proud of. Sara, welcome to the show. Without further ado, let's frickin' go.
Wow. I love that. I love that so much.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I tried to glean as much as I could because I haven't dove super deep into your work. But I can tell that you're similar to me where you're like, let's not waste time with the stuff that's already been tried because these are very real problems that young people are facing today.
Right. For sure.
So then 100%. Actually that opens us up to, I love to ask people, who are you and what do you stand for?
Who am I? I'm Sara. I am a wife, a mom, a coach, a martial artist, and an artist, and I'm me. I like the color orange. I have my orange glasses on today, and I stand for adulting being fun, and that's a hashtag I use. Adulting is fun. I have embraced different difficulties in my life, and I have found that with a change in perspective, I can actually make most things positive or fun. Not like you said in the poem, putting a smile on a frown, turn a frown upside down, but really looking into things and seeing that there's a whole beautiful reason why we are all here on this planet together, and to get caught up in the stuff that doesn't ultimately make us more joyful or more fulfilled or more purposeful, it doesn't do anything for me. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. So I stand for adulting being fun because I can't stand when I hear people go, "Oh, I don't want to adult today."
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, there's so much fun you can have with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then what got you interested in doing this work? How did you find yourself I would say you primarily coach young adults, correct?
Yes. Like in the 17, 18 to 20-ish range. It's a really critical time where, it's been said like, oh, we spend 18 years of our lives getting told what to do, where to be, how to behave, and what to wear, and where to go. And then suddenly your 18th birthday, you're technically an adult. You're on your own, have fun. So how are we preparing our young people to be impactful in the world and make a difference and live lives that they want to live? And I know in my own experience, I graduated high school, didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do after high school, after college. So everybody just went to college, and there was just that expectation. You go to college, and with a degree, you'll be able to do anything.
Hmm.
Well, nobody ever really helped me figure out what that anything could be,
Hmm.
like specifically. As I'm an adult now, I'm learning that there are some wild jobs out there that
Truly.
I never knew of when I was younger. And of course, the world has changed and technology has changed, and there are vastly more opportunities now than when I graduated. But I went to college with the expectation, well, if I have a degree, then I can get a job and I can have a life, and everything will be fine. And I graduated college in 2001 when we headed right into a recession, and I was competing for entry level jobs with people who had been in the fields that I wanted to go in for like 10, 20, 30 years because they
Hmm.
had been laid off and were out of work. So I had no chance. I wanted to go into publishing, and I ended up working at a bookstore. So,
Ah.
close enough, right?
And so there's an interesting parallel for a lot of young people right now who are entering the job market with the mass layoffs. And something I keep
Right.
saying is everyone's like, oh, these kids don't want to work. It's like, honey, they're not going to work for $12 an hour at the grocery store when they can like make a lot of money on TikTok selling like face serum. You know,
Right.
like they're all a lot
Right.
more savvy and like
Hmm.
technical and entrepreneurial, I think, than previous generations are prepared
Oh, for
for.
sure.
And so they think it's like kids are just like sitting around watching anime. And it's like these people are building empires at like
Yeah.
22. And
Yeah.
I think that's cool personally, but
Oh,
I
it's
think there's like
amazing.
a really like flawed narrative around why there aren't enough people to do minimum wage, incredibly difficult jobs.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's 100% true, and I'm working with some students now, and like we were talking about how the expectation with other professionals that they've encountered has been like, oh, you need to have the corporate speak, or the certain there's all this um murkiness around the language and the communication, and the expectations are not clear. And I said to them, I'm like, that's why it's so exciting that you get to do this and be exposed to different professionals, because you get to change the language. You get to create your own way of doing business in the world, because the time is right and the society is ripe for that shift
Yeah,
to
that
be made.
disruption even.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really see honestly a lot of young people not tolerating nonsense
Hmm.
from older generations, whereas I feel
Oh,
like
they have
millennials,
such a great BS monitor. Like,
yeah, they're just like nah, pass.
right.
Which I think is great because I feel like when I was coming up, I'm a couple years younger than you, but
Hmm.
I feel like our generations were challenging the status quo, but we were really like
Yeah.
villainized for it. And now it's
Hmm.
like you couldn't villainize Gen Z if you tried because they truly don't care. Like
Right.
they just think it's funny and cringe that you even think you could do that to them. Uh,
Right. I know. It's a whole different scene. It's wild.
but on top of that, I just watched this thing about how there is a generational thing with like more helicopter parenting
Mm,
and some young people not really feeling confident, like making moves on their own
right.
or, not having the opportunity to take risks and make mistakes as young people. Is that
Hmm.
something you
Hmm.
see with the folks you work with?
Yeah, that's definitely can be an issue, because they haven't learned how to fail, essentially, because things have been orchestrated so strictly around their childhoods. And that's something that's becoming more of a conversation. And if you talk to college administrators and people who work with students who are going out into the world, it can be difficult. I saw a TikTok on this mother making her daughter go into her own doctor's appointment by herself when she was 18, because she's 18. And like, she's freaking out. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know what to do. And it was funny, and it's like, why hasn't why haven't they been taught how to ask good questions and how to
Hmm.
advocate for themselves? And to an extent they have, because they've been exposed to the social media and the kind of community and cultural shifts that we've seen. They are really passionate about advocating for other people who are not getting a fair shot in life, or whatever it is. Like, they're really, really passionate about justice and about advocating for other people. And yet it's like, wait, I have to make my own doctor's appointment? Eee, That's
Mm-hmm.
scary. So it definitely is a thing, and it is about finding those small ways for them to take little risks, maybe fail about 20% of the time so that you feel good about 80% of the time, like, yeah, I got this, I can do this. But then you fail that 20%, and that's in that sweet learning spot where
Mm-hmm.
you can actually learn the lessons from the failure because you've seen some success.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of element of that. I like to say that I help my clients find the courage to suck at something new,
Mm-hmm.
find the courage to suck and fail, because that's part of life.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes from Adventure Time is sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something. And
Yeah.
that's what I always tell myself. Like I just self-published my
100%.
first book. It was extremely
Yeah.
hard and I did not know what I was doing and it took a lot of research and I had to
Mm-hmm.
reformat my entire manuscript the second time, but like
Mm-hmm.
I did it. And
Right.
I often will say
Yeah.
that so I used to have like crippling anxiety and was like pretty unable
Mm-hmm.
to do a lot of things and then I started taking improv classes. And I think improv taught me
Oh,
that you can
that's
fail in front
scary.
of a crowd. Yeah, I love it. I loved it though. It like really set me
Yes. Oh,
free.
I know.
And because I realized like after you fail, every second after that failure, it becomes less and less relevant. So if you just keep
Right.
moving forward, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. But I feel like you do have to have that opportunity to experience the
Mm-hmm.
fact that the stakes aren't as high as you think they are. And before you've
Right.
tested the stakes, they're, catastrophically high, And
Oh
I think
yeah, and we
there's
have a lot of conversations about that when we're talking about the things that are scary or the anxiety that's coming up around a certain situation. It's Most people don't ask the question of, okay, so what if the worst case scenario happens? And
Mhm.
allow it and entertain it and explore it. And even in your mind, you can start, you don't have to do improv about it or anything like that. Like, even in your mind, you can start to see, oh, if the thing I'm really afraid of actually happens, well, then I will call my parents, or I will talk to a friend about it, or I will, you know, I'll scream, or it's like they start to see that they have resources and tools and skills to fall back on. It's that resisting of the fear itself that causes the anxiety to go higher, higher, higher,
Mhm.
higher, because you're fighting against it, thinking, oh, this is stupid, I shouldn't be afraid of this, like, it's so small, it's so stupid. But then that resistance makes it get bigger and bigger and bigger. And
Mhm.
so that's a lot of what we do, is just like kind of exploring, like, okay, well, why do you think that? Why are you afraid of that? What would actually happen? And is it really true that if you don't choose the right path after graduation, it's going to be the end of the world and you're going to do nothing for the rest of your life? Is that really
Mhm.
true? Like, are you doing nothing now? Like, we talk
Right.
about that. So yeah, it's definitely getting out there, putting yourself out there, like with improv, or even just giving yourself the space to think about it a minute, like realistically,
Mhm.
can do a world of good with a shift in the mindset.
Yeah, and I feel like for myself as a person who was really debilitated by that anxiety, I think each time I experienced a setback and overcame it, I, now in my 30s have a lot of confidence
Right.
in my like catastrophic problem solving abilities because I'm like, well, nothing's going to be as bad as that. And I got through
Right.
that, and I got these like
Yeah.
8 skills by surviving that. But before you have those skills, I think the ambiguity is maybe what's so
Hmm.
terrifying. The like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what could happen, and it could
Hmm.
be 25 things, and I am not prepared for 20 of those things.
Oh yeah.
And
And
it,
that's what
yeah,
we
the
do.
snowball.
That's what we do when we teach martial arts too, is like, even when we're teaching like new beginners, it's, let's connect the movement that your body needs to make with something you already do. Like, if you're doing
Hmm.
front kicks and you got to do a front kick down the length of the mat, it's, hey, you know how you walk? Like, just do that, but pick your feet up higher. It's
Right.
connecting it to something they already know. So like you're saying, you have the tools to rely on. And before, it's like maybe you had like a fraction of a tool, and then you used that fraction of a tool to learn the whole tool. And then
Hmm.
when you were faced with the next issue, then it's like, oh, well, I did that before, would that apply here? And you start applying it, and you start to realize that you actually are more equipped than you thought you were when you
Hmm.
start, like you say, stacking up those wins. and those overcoming the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you're at a level 1, a level 3 problem is catastrophic. But if you're at a level 8, a level 3 problem is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you got to build up that level, those levels, and level up so that the level 3 problems that used to destroy you don't anymore, and they're just nothing. So yeah, if you're coming up against a 9 or a 10 problem and you're at level 7, that's going to be a lot tougher. And because you're already
Mm-hmm.
at a level 7, you know that you can tap into some of those resources and tools that you learned and skills that you learned at levels, 4, 5, and 6.
And I'm curious because I hear a lot that the younger generations are a little bit more like nihilistic or even like absurdist. And I feel like nihilism,
Mm.
absurdist nihilism is something that has, or even optimistic nihilism, as I like to play with it sometimes, has been a huge service in my life and sort of like marries into a lot of my Buddhism, where I've started realizing that even if there is a catastrophic issue, the the stakes usually aren't as high as I think they are. And I'm
Hmm.
curious if you see that, because there's a lot of nihilistic humor in the younger
Right.
generations. But do you feel like that is sort of the flip side of like really like caring a lot about stuff? Like, do you see any duality there?
I definitely. I think I'm trying to think about how to unpack that, because it's true, and I think it can border on this, you know, slope into depression, or
Mm-hmm.
what's the point, and the sort of the laziness and all the stereotypes that other older people put on the younger
Mm-hmm.
generation. Is sometimes they are just like, well, what's the point? And it's really a deeper thing, where maybe they're joking, and maybe it seems to be helpful coping at the time, and they really are terrified that there is no point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely something I've seen, and I want to help unpack, because as long as we're here, there's work to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's purpose and there's meaning in it, even if we're only here till tomorrow. And it doesn't necessarily matter if the end of the world is in 5 minutes or in 500 years. It's they are really aware that the world could end at any time. It almost did for them in the last 3
Mm-hmm.
years because of everything that happened. And even before then, they've grown up with this like shadow of 9/11, terrorism, war, like school shootings, all of the things. Like they've been spoon-fed anxiety from birth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is very real to them that the world could end at any time. And a lot of them are searching for, like, well, what does my life mean if this is going to be over in a blink? So
Mm-hmm.
it's tough, because I remember even facing some of those questions when I was young and being terrified and just sort of setting it aside. Oh, I'm not going to think about it, because telling myself it's not going to happen. The end of the world's not going to happen in my lifetime. Well, here we are, and it's like, well, it's a very real possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've grown and learned, it's like, well, there's still meaning in it. There's still beauty in it. There's still fun in it, and there's still purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what we try to instill in them as well.
Well, I think another thing that I've found has brought me freedom is realizing that we don't get to know what happens. So even
Mhm.
if you do everything right or if you do everything
Right.
wrong, you could still walk through the
Absolutely.
right door a certain day and meet the right person or see the right thing. And
Mhm.
your whole life can change in truly bizarre ways. Like
Oh, yeah.
like my life partner and nesting partner who I have a family and a home with now, we met because we posted on Tinder about like wanting to wrestle or something like that. And now it's like the most bizarre like shot in the dark of like, man, I'm just gonna put out this gag, and then it's like, oh, here comes my soulmate. You never know.
Yeah, somebody gets it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, somebody
Yeah.
gets it.
And so I think that has helped me too, is realizing, because I'm a little bit of a control freak, low key, or
Mhm.
have been in the past, but realizing that I
Yeah.
actually have no control and that anything could happen to me allows me to
Mhm.
kind of, I think, show up for the chaos and sort of just like
Right.
immerse myself in the chaos and even revel in it a bit of like, wow, I could
Isn't it
never have done this on purpose.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how the release of control actually gives you more of a sense of a control
Hmm.
over yourself and over your life. Yes,
Well, I
and
think
that's
I think it
very
changes
big
the
as
scope.
right. And that's very big, especially with the young people I work with who are high achievers, young leaders. Like they want to go out and change the world and make an impact. And again, they're kind of scared of doing it wrong, doing the wrong
Hmm.
thing, taking the wrong path, making the wrong choice. When again, it's well, let's explore. Let's see like what would happen if you made the wrong path. Like you
Hmm.
could still end up in a really cool place
Yeah.
because you are still going to be living your values and you're still going to be, following your passions and you're still going to be doing what you love to do and surrounded by the people who are going to support you and lift you up. So even if you end up in the wrong place, it still could be the right place.
Hmm. Well, and as like over half of the guests on this podcast have, shared their tales, like many of us have taken a
Mm.
rocky path or a tough path, and that
Hmm.
testimony ends up defining us and turning us into leaders and turning us
Right.
into, ambitious people. Because when you lose everything, you realize that you can still live through that. And so
Hmm.
then the risks, I think, don't feel as risky when you have lost everything.
Right.
But before you've lost everything, it feels terrifying, I
Oh, yeah.
think. Um, but so a question I wanted to ask you too, just kind of, you had mentioned that it's such a critical time when a person is, 18 to 25.
Hmm.
Something I think a lot about is like the concept of rites of passage and how either
Hmm.
culture or religion used to provide that for us. And sort of in
Hmm.
the absence of those rituals, um, I'm curious what you see as a vision for how we can sort of honor that what's the word for it, the the transition from like
Yeah.
you're a baby to now you're a person who has to do stuff. And in some ways I think we should do it a little sooner than 18. That's just my
Oh,
feel,
yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
um like I had a lot of responsibility as a young person, maybe too much, but I
Hmm.
do think that there's a balance there that is good for people
Right.
to realize how capable they are. Like my daughter is a very capable 3-year old. She's
Hmm.
very confident. And then of course, she has her limitations because she's very short, but she's a great problem solver. um, uh,
Yes,
and
my
so,
kids have always been solution oriented as well. Like one of them was trying to move a dresser when he was like 2 years old because he
mhm,
wanted to climb to the top shelf of the closet. Like,
right.
no big deal. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like,
Hmm.
I'm just trying to move this so I can get up there. Yeah, that's not going to work because he's 2 and it's a dresser full of clothes.
Right. And it's like the worst thing for them to
but
play with.
but they
But
they find the solution
so then, how do you
in his
feel
head.
like? What do you feel like are the crucial parts of the rites of passage that are sort of missing in our culture today? And what are some like? Do you feel like individual coaching and mentorship is a good one, or like are there other spaces where people can have that transition honored and sort of be fostered through that?
Yeah, I'm actually learning a lot and what I know is that 2020 took away all those rites of passages that we did have.
Hmm.
And they're still not quite back to what they were in depending on where you are. And I think the grown-ups were just like, "Oh, thank God we don't have to do all these extra things cuz we're overwhelmed as 30, 40, 50s year, adults because we haven't learned proper coping skills at times or life
Or how to
balance
say
and
no?
managing our time and focus, how to say no and all the things. So, oh, if you're going to do it, it's got to be a whole stressful thing. So I think some of that comes from like adults just going like, oh, I get to let this go. Awesome. Not realizing that like you said, what it's doing to the young people who really do need something meaningful to mark their passage into adulthood, into their next level, whatever that looks like. So I think, yeah, things like graduations and celebrations and things like that, it definitely important. And sometimes it depends on the individual. Like there are introverts who don't like big parties or big to-dos, and finding something that's meaningful for them to mark an occasion, I think is really important. So I am still exploring and learning about different ways to mark that transition, that up leveling, that passage into adulthood, the rites and rituals that would be effective. I am a Christian. We go, we have church, but and I'm part of our high school youth group, a small group leader there, and there's there's different activities and spaces that we provide for the students through church, and it's not anything super, you know, I don't know, ritualistic or anything like that. There's not, it's not a Catholic church where there's confirmation or something like super ritualistic. It's they get to choose if they want to be baptized, and most of them don't, and that's okay. But it's like, and we'll have a party at the end of the year to kind of send off our seniors. But yeah, after the seniors kind of go off out of the high school program, they may end up disconnected depending on where they go to college and things like that. So we do try and offer them opportunities to serve and be part of maybe the middle school ministry or something like that, where they can come back and give back, because again, that provides that purpose and meaning, and it signals their transition. They're no longer a student in the student community, but they are a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So that things like that can really be supportive for the right students. Again, it's not for everybody, but yeah, I'm still kind of exploring those ideas and concepts about the rites of passage and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
because you're right, we don't have a lot of them, and we haven't for quite some time, and 2020
Mm-hmm.
was a huge thing because the ones we did have went away. So it's like, now they're being evaluated. Do we really need them? Do we need to pay the expense? And it's bureaucracy and it's whatever. So yeah, who knows? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure what that's going to look like, and I would love to be a part of something that creates something for to support that.
Yeah, and I think you're really right that it is really individually based, because I think about, people who benefit from, a religious type of ceremony or sort of process,
Hmm.
people who, like myself, were in the, were queer, and so like I wasn't really like allowed to participate in my church anymore. And so, where do our queer kids go? There's a lot of people, I think, that are unfortunately left out of the religious paradigms
Hmm.
or even
Yeah.
aren't really interested in it. As much as I think that there are some really valuable aspects to like being in community and celebrating and
Hmm.
singing and all of that. I found
Yeah.
also that my religious the parts that I did have were really sterilized and didn't really
Yeah.
give me the tools to deal with like really really hard stuff, that like
Right.
shame and like with
Yeah.
really big mistakes and stuff like that. Like I didn't feel like in a religious
Yeah.
context that I could
Yeah.
get guidance around those things, and so I was very much on my own, in a
Yeah.
way that I don't want other young people to be.
Yeah, and that's something I do love about our church. Is we're a Christian church. We have students on every level of identity expression, sexuality in our student program. So it it really is intended to be a welcoming space for anyone exploring questions of faith, and we do
Mm-hmm.
address some of the harder questions and harder things. The series we've got coming up is called "The Struggle Is Real," and they're talking about some of those, really real struggles of identity and things like that in church. Which,
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I never saw that in church. Like,
Yeah.
and I grew up Catholic, so that's has its own set of rules and ceremonial tasks and things you have to do and how you have to show up. And so I'm really grateful for the church that I'm in now, which is a much more personal, connected, communal relationship. And it's not that it's a condoning relationship of all things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a welcoming place to explore, meet you where you're at, and again get you to that, just taking a next step and exploring and seeing what's right for you, which I find really valuable. And I
Yeah, I
think
think
for our students it has been as well. So
I'm glad to hear that those kinds of
yeah.
spaces are developing, because I did grow up in a very
Yeah.
conservative small town, so there's still
Hmm.
to this day not really much there, but in some
Right,
areas
right,
there's plenty.
exactly. Yeah, one of our students was like did not feel welcome at their previous church, and was expressing that they are just grateful to have the friends in the community that they've managed, they've cultivated through our student program, which is awesome. And that's what it's all about. And for
Mm-hmm.
me and my faith, it is about, I'm here to be love and be loving, and show people God through me, show
Mm-hmm.
people how that connects us again. I don't need to get into this being
Oh,
a
that's
like a
okay.
religious
You can bring all that here.
conversation,
That's totally fine. Yeah.
which is, but it is, it's part of who I am. And I am not, but I'm not like, conservative, like do it my way or else kind of person.
Hmm.
No, I'm working with young people. I'm cringe enough already. I don't need to add anything to
Right.
to that. So it's about, just exploring with them and getting with them. And that's what Jesus came down, got with people
Hmm.
to be with them and to see them for who they are and to show them that they have a purpose, whether they think they're broken beyond repair or not. Like there's a place and there's a reason that we're all here. So that's how I approach and integrate my faith with what I do.
Yeah, and I think I actually share a really similar perspective. Like I read the entire New Testament and was very, very into it. I would say I still am
Hmm.
into like the teachings of Jesus, even though I don't go
Yeah.
to like a traditional church. But I totally agree with you that he didn't create like a platform that separated him from other people. He like was with people where they
Yeah.
were. And I felt like my church was so judgmental and so like cast you out on a dime kind of stuff. And it's just weird to have that yeah, that religious upbringing to feel so
Hmm.
counter what I was understanding about Jesus, and even my own personal
Yeah.
relationship with Christ and all of that. Like,
Yeah.
just didn't
That's
really align with
unfortunate.
that. But there are
Yeah.
churches out there that are really moving it forward, and I think that's wonderful because, like I said,
Yeah.
I do think there's really beneficial aspects too, for
Yeah,
young people
because we're
and all
searching.
kinds of people.
Yeah, we're all searching for that meaning and that purpose and that connection to higher power, universe, whatever, like whatever
Hmm.
you believe in or whatever, sounds like it makes sense. It's it is that connection that we're here for. And if you don't have some sort of faith or spiritual life, it's a lot harder to
Hmm.
connect with a purpose and with a larger meaning in your life, to find that fulfillment that we're all looking for.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right too that faith in whatever it is you have faith in is part of what keeps you going when it is really tough.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to give up because there are a lot of reasons to. But I think
Yeah.
having people who will remind you why you're great. That's part. Like we have a small community here that I don't know what exactly we're drawing from, but we talk about religion and spirituality and consciousness, and we meet once a week and we draw and we drink coffee and we do effectively what a church does, and I think it's
Yeah.
really
That
good
sounds
for all
awesome.
of us. So yeah, I think everybody, I think even just the regularity and the snacks are good for
Snacks
people.
are super important.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so then to tie it
Especially
back,
for teenagers.
yes, yeah.
All about the
Otherwise,
snacks.
hangry.
I always have the wrong snacks in my house for my kids, but
Oh no,
there's a
not me.
Taco
My
Bell
daughter
right
only
down the
eats one
road, so
food.
it's okay.
Yeah, Taco Bell comes through. So,
Right.
to sort of wrap it around back to the concept of professionalism, I'm curious what your own journey has been with the concept of professionalism, and then I'd love to talk to you more about like what goes on with your clients.
Yeah. I've never been a professional. Like, I don't feel
Nice.
like because I didn't go into a traditional job. If I would have gotten that publishing job after college, maybe it would have been more, I would have worn blazers and pencil skirts and things like, the stereotypical professional woman would be. But I, I worked at a bookstore, so I got to wear my jeans and t-shirts and, we just had to wear the name tag. There was not a uniform or anything like that. So there was a lot of room for self-expression, and I love bright colors. And um, yeah, and I did my job well. So when I needed to get different jobs, I could speak articulately, and I was never super wild or outrageous on interviews. But, as I get comfortable in a place, it's like, okay, I'll, maybe wear some bell bottoms or like bright colors or something. But, but yeah, it's been interesting because I've mostly had like retail jobs. I had an office job once, but it was very like, what do you call it? It's like casual, um, corporate casual. I don't know. I had a few, more professional outfits, wore khakis and polo shirts sometimes. But again, it was I was one person in the office and there was one other person in the office. So I had to be smiling and pleasant and professional
Hmm.
on the phone. And I was just myself. So I didn't feel like it was anything too extra that I had to fit into,
Hmm.
even when I had an office job. But most of my other jobs have been kind of, creative. I worked for a photographer. I worked for, retail for the bookstores. And I had a job in Milwaukee when we moved back this way after living in the DC area. My first job that I got back when we came back in 2011 ish, 2012, I got a job as a handwriter. So I wrote handwritten letters as a service,
Oh, wow.
based on, it was a technology software that, it showed us the addresses and the text for the card, and we would write it by hand and write the envelope, seal it, mail it, off it goes. So it was like,
Right.
that was probably one of the more unique jobs that I had. And then as my kids got a little older, I decided to start my own business. So it was like, well, I can do what I want.
Hmm.
So that's sort of been my experience with professional. Is it shows up in different ways over time for me. And I
Hmm.
worked at a chamber of commerce. That was the office job I had. So I was meeting all these different business owners who were showing up different ways, and they were all
Hmm.
professional. But I didn't really recognize it as much in my early 20s as looking back, I notice now. It's like, oh yeah, they were their own business. They expressed themselves. They were their brand, all the things I'm learning now as I'm doing my business. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you didn't really ever have to like conform too much and like break out of it, which is great. I'm
Right.
curious if you see young people that you're working with who are approaching their careers, if they're
Hmm.
is that part of the concern? Like, are they concerned about whether or not they should be professional? It sounds like you mentioned like
I don't think so.
jargon. Mm, that's great.
Yeah, it's a matter of like how to communicate well, and how to answer questions on an interview, or how to present themselves as themselves and the strengths they bring, because I think they are redefining professionalism.
Hmm.
Because again, like you said, they can sit on TikTok and make a bunch of money, or sell things on YouTube, or create apps, or whatever. Whatever. There's so many different ways to earn a living now that there weren't before.
Hmm.
That professional now, and especially post pandemic, looks like I'm sitting in front of a green screen in my room. Like, you don't know whether my space is professional or not.
Hmm.
So it's like there's so much virtual things we can do that we can make our worlds look the however we want them to.
Hmm.
And I think that's really exciting, because it allows for their creativity to really shine, and it can still be professional. And some of the students I work with, they want to go into environmental science, or architecture, or things like that. So yeah, they're going to probably have to present a little bit more professionally. But like you said, they don't have the time or the patience for the BS that comes with professionalism.
Hmm.
They're like, you're gonna, are you gonna support me in what I want to do with my career, or are you not? And if you're not, I'll go somewhere who will.
Right.
Like,
Or do my own thing.
that's, yeah, or do my own thing. It's a very real option for them. So, and if they choose to be that, fit into that, then cool. Like, it's a totally valid option
Hmm.
to put on a suit and go to work every day. And some people really like that. And
Yeah, that
there's
feels good for you.
that sort of, yeah, there's that throwback to like, oh yeah, it feels really good to wear a suit and a, fedora hat, or so, like something like that,
Hmm.
where that is a different level of expression, where they're sort of coming back around full circle to that more traditional professionalism for
Hmm.
some of them.
But as an elective, as opposed to like,
Yeah, as a choice.
the only thing that you can do. And
Exactly.
I think yeah,
Exactly.
choosing to wear a suit, sometimes you can be like, ooh, like I'm a little overdressed for
Hmm.
this space, and that's kind of fun. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah.
then the next question I have for you then about the young people you work with is, what do you feel is the largest like misconception around young people? That
Mm.
you hear or even internalized from them. Like, is there anything that is in the broader narrative that you disagree with around young people?
What I'm working on right now is a section of my book. I'm doing a project, and I'm working with some graphic design students who are helping me with it. And so the topic that we're kind of exploring is this, like, I don't want to call it peer pressure. I just did a TikTok yesterday that I don't want to say
Mm,
peer pressure, because it's more of a like social influence, but not necessarily even just social or just peers and friends or just social media. It's being awake to the influences that are all around us. And I think a misconception is that because teens are on their phones all the time, they're not being social. And that's not true at all. If they're gaming, if they're on their phones, they are being social. That's the way they connect, that's the way they communicate. And they're very aware of the dangers of it, of getting too attached and too sucked into social media. So I've had these, we've had some conversations where they're really like, oh yeah, I hear that they chose to put time limits on their screens. Like my phone only has an hour limit or something like that, where they're being more conscious and proactive about how they choose to use the technology. Where again, are they all there? No, they're not all at that level yet. And, a lot of them still sucked into the endless scrolling or the gaming for hours on their own. But a lot of them, they're using the tools, they're using it to connect, they're using it socially. So to say that they don't know how to interact is not true, because they
hmm
do. It's just they're interacting on a different playing field, on a different in a different way.
Yeah, I've started to almost think about social media almost like a different dimension. Like it's
Hmm.
it's almost like a what did they call it? Like that plane. What's the word I'm thinking of? It's like yeah, it just feels like another realm almost, to where like if I'm
Yeah.
not feeling well, like especially if I'm sick, I'll just dive
Hmm.
into like my sort of like mental space where I'll be like
Hmm.
learning and talking to people, and
Hmm.
like all of this unseen stuff becomes very tangible to me, especially as a person with
Right.
chronic illness. Like sometimes I just disappear into that because it's so much more comfortable than being in a body. um,
Mm.
and I'm sure many young people
Yeah.
also do that because sometimes being alive is very stressful. um,
Yeah.
so the next question I have on my list for you, which is a little, it's related but a little different, is if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self advice, what would you say?
Oof. I would probably ask myself some good questions to figure out what kind of life I really wanted, and if the choices I was making really were the right choices for me at that time. And again,
Hmm
like being who I am and where I am now, I'm like, I can't imagine it any differently. But I would probably tell myself that there are more opportunities than I thought there are.
hmm Yeah, it's a much
and
wider
that
field.
and that it's important to know why I'm choosing what I'm choosing.
hmm Yeah, there's something I talk about
Yeah.
sometimes called the prescribed life. And I feel like the
Hmm.
prescribed life is just the path that we're told we have to
Right.
take. But there's just
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of other stuff you can do.
Right. Even if it still ends up being checking the boxes, right? I went to
hmm
college, I went to grad school, I got married, got a house, had some kids. Like I checked the boxes of what like adulting is supposed to look like.
hmm
And it still felt like there's got to be more. Like what else? What am I missing?
hmm
Because I went through a lot of years going like, okay, I did the next thing. Like now what? Okay, now I want another baby. Do and I did, and I my family is awesome, and I'm so grateful to have my kids and to have had the kind of path that I had. And it's like I really didn't start asking myself bigger questions about my life until I started having to be an example to my kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Like,
sense. I think
oh, what do I
parenting
want to
does
show
that.
them?
Right. And what do I want to
Um,
yeah, as a role model, like, do I
yeah,
want to limit myself or do I want to show like how expansive it can be to exist?
right. And then I started looking for it, and then I found so many cool things.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can kind of, I don't know, just crack that door open a little bit sooner, I think would be, really powerful. And we're not far off, because these young people, they are very, very self-aware, so much more than I was ever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm like, well, you should be coaching me, because
Right.
they do, like, they have this amazing insight, and like we said, their BS meter is just, finely tuned. And it's like, oh man, if I would have been able to see through some of the stuff that I missed when I was younger, like, my
Mm-hmm.
life would be a little bit different. And I don't know if it would be better or worse, or just different. Who knows? But there definitely would have been some different insights happening over the course of my journey.
I also love that it's clear that you're a coach, because when I asked you what advice you would give to yourself, you said that you would ask yourself
I would
questions,
ask myself
which
questions,
is,
yes,
yeah, that's great. That's perfect coaching.
because I know I needed to figure it out for myself.
Mm-hmm. Not to
And
be
if I
told.
showed up, right, if I showed up in my life telling me myself what to do, like, I wouldn't have done it. So
Mm.
I wouldn't
That's
do
a
it
really good
anyway.
perspective.
So yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And that is what coaching is about, because you have to come to the answer. And that's why as a coach working with teens and young adults, I find it's a really important space for me to be in, because they don't want to go to their parents, they don't want to go to a teacher, or somebody, or boss, even. There's that hierarchy, and there's that extra barrier to, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a resistance there. So it's like having just somebody else just a little bit ahead of you. Even, I mean, it doesn't have to be me, it's just a little bit ahead, going, hey, you
Mm-hmm.
could do this, or you could think about it this way, and hey, why are you doing it that way? And just somebody else coming in and holding up a mirror, or holding up the telescope, or whatever it is, so that they can start to see things for themselves that their parents, teachers, and everybody has been pouring into them all along,
Right.
that they just kind of don't want to look at right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all those blind spots.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question for you is, I'm curious what the biggest challenges that you're facing in your business or your coaching practice, and how are you tackling it?
My biggest challenge, I think, is my focus and energy management. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like to
It's
say
hard.
time management, because you can't manage time. But I know that the consistency in showing up on social media and creating content and adding value to my audience, my clients, my subscribers, things like that, it's really important for me to stay connected. And it's really hard for me to want to do, because
Mm-hmm.
I have a tough time planning it out in advance, and I have a tough time doing it in the moment. So I don't know if
Mm.
there's some place in between. So I usually do kind of a little bit of both. I do some planning, and then I don't always execute the entirety of my, like, marketing plan, for example.
Ah.
Like, I don't always show up all of the things that I plan to do, because something comes up and I'm like, oh, well, I want to talk about this on TikTok today instead. And so I kind of am finding the balance between that, having it all written out or all done in a day beforehand, or something where you can just schedule
Mm-hmm.
it and post it. I don't know. I schedule some stuff, and I do some stuff in the moment, and I don't know. It's working okay, and I know there's a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah, marketing is it's like riding a bull, you know. It's like it's
Yeah.
exhausting. You have to be so dynamic and you have to be able to
Mm-hmm.
make these, critical choices in the moment, and then sometimes you get thrown off. And like
Yeah.
sometimes I got to take a couple weeks off because I'm like, wow, I just went viral
Right.
on TikTok and
It's a
everyone was
lot.
mean to me, so I'm going to take a break, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and we're
it's
so much more susceptible to, like, fixating on the mean comments than the than the
Yep.
positive ones too.
Two
So
mean comments will
right.
outweigh 100 nice ones for sure.
Yep. Yep. And that's the, that's the danger of it. That's the practice of like building the resilience and building the they're not my people, the letting go of control over what other people say or do in our lives. Let all the
Hmm.
things we were talking about before.
Yeah, it's definitely a practice. That's the right word for it. So
Yeah.
then, to roll into that, where can people find you on the internet if they want to connect with you or learn more about you? What are the best places to either get in touch with you or learn from you?
Yeah, my website is probably the most centralized location, saradeacon.com, SaraDeacon.com. And on there, I have some resources and all the links to my social. I'm Sara Deacon Coach on all the platforms. So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. I think it's Sara Deacon Coach on LinkedIn. I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
I don't promote the LinkedIn a lot because
Right.
my people are on TikTok and Instagram, let's be real.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
So
that
that's
makes
where
sense.
I
That's yeah.
am. And yeah, and on my website there's a option to do to book a call with me for up to an hour of time to really kind of dig into, what's going on and brainstorm some strategies for moving forward. I really try to add value on that call. And if they want to continue working with me, then that invitation will be extended at that point. But yeah, that's my adult successfully strategy session, which is
Nice.
available through my website.
Very cool. Adult successfully strategy session. And so I heard you
Yes.
say that you're working on a book. Are there any other things you're sort of like building right now that you're excited about? Or you
Um,
could talk about the book.
the the book kind of, I don't know, maybe kind of like yours or maybe not quite, but it kind of evolved as an accident. I've had the idea to write a book for a long time, and then just in the last month I was invited to work on a project with this team of students in one of our local schools where I got connected with this organization. It's called the Launch Project. And I got connected with them and they said, well, here's how it works. And they invited me to speak in May, which is great. And as I was absorbing, kind of sitting with what they had told me about how the projects work, I was like, I wonder if they could help me with my book.
Hmm.
And I I asked that question and the response I got was, "All right, we'll connect you with our media students and you're going to go in April." I was like, "Okay, I
Wow.
guess I'm doing it."
That's
Which
exciting.
again, when you think about, okay, I put my intentions into the world and universe, God provides, well, here's an answer. So what we're
Yeah.
trying to do by the end of this like 6 or 7 week session is create a section, like a small section of the book to potentially shop around to publishers to
Ooh.
use as part of a pitch.
You're
So
going the
because it is
publisher
going to
route.
be,
Fancy.
maybe we'll see, unless we do it ourselves. The thing is, it's going to be kind of a graphic novel style.
Ooh.
So there's more to that than I know
That
how
is
to
more
do.
expensive than
So
the self-publishing route also from my
right.
research.
Right. So it's going to be it's going to be an interesting thing. And if it ends up being a digital thing, cool. If it ends up getting actually printed and produced, that would be amazing. So
Yeah.
we're just kind of seeing where it goes right now, and it is going to be more of a like a personal development and growth book for high school or college aged demographic.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to see that when it comes
Yeah,
out. And so
yeah.
the final question I love to ask everybody is there anything in your heart, in your soul, in your mind that, given this space that you want to say to anyone who might be listening?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure.
No, yeah, no pressure, but there's just a total vacuum.
Where there's a total vacuum. No, it's interesting because it's like, okay, here's the last words of wisdom from me. Um, I think it's really important to consider the words that you say to yourself and to other people. Our words matter. Words are very important. That's something that I work a lot with my clients is and other people, just inviting them to change the words, because the words we use influence the thoughts we have, and our thoughts impact our feelings, and our feelings influence our behavior. So
Mm-hmm.
if we want to change the world, I believe, as a word nerd and, book nerd and writer and person who likes words, the words matter, and that's where we got to start. And the changing of the language has brought interesting changes to our culture, to our relationships, to the whole world. And I love that language is continually evolving and alive. My invitation is that we need to use our words intentionally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's very true. Words create your
I mean,
reality
as
for
a
sure.
poet,
I
of
mean, I
course.
would say they're all spells, and if there are
Yeah.
spells in the book, and
Mm-hmm.
it's mantras, however you want to put it, but like
Mm-hmm.
the words do have power and they do integrate
Yeah.
with your reality. So I think you're right on with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Sara, for being here. I've really appreciated chatting with you. I will put all the links to your information in the
Yeah.
show notes for anyone who wants to look it up. But yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, for everyone listening, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
All right, humans. That was the 11th episode of the Anti-Professional Podcast, sponsored by Identity Pending and also my book, A Pocket Full of Seeds by Chuck Copenspire. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that if you are a young person that you are inspired to work with Sara, because Sara is a great leader and mentor. And if you are an older person, I hope that you got some perspective on young people today, because they got a lot going on. We should show them some respect. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. I still don't know how to do a podcast, but boy, it almost looks like I do. Have a great day. Bye for now.